everybody, it's Allie. Sorry I'm running a little late. I had another call that went over, but I'm so grateful to be able to do this for you guys. I wanted to go live and talk about a few resources, some support stuff, and some options that are available right now for anybody that is trying to navigate this incredible time of caring for parents, aging parents during coronavirus. And we're all in uncharted territory here. So I've tried to put together a list of resources, but I'm also going to talk about some kind of creative ways that a lot of us as professionals in this industry are starting to see different communities and caregivers approaching this dilemma. So when I was thinking about how I wanted to go through everything with you guys, I was thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I actually saw a friend post on LinkedIn a few days ago about how those different, if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the bottom is like physiological needs, like shelter, food, that kind of thing. And as you go up, it gets to higher level needs, like family and self-actualization is the peak of it. But what she had kind of broken it down into was three different levels that were, or four, sorry. Bottom was information, physiological, psychological, and then community. And I really like that because I think that's a good way to approach the idea of caregiving for aging parents in this time. So I'm going to start sort of at the bottom with like the information and then go up towards the top. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on information and physiological because I think you can find a lot of resources on those. So I put a ton of links you'll see in the description of this video to different pages and groups and resources that you can use to navigate any kind of questions you might have about guidelines. Obviously, I'm sure most of us have been to the CDC to see the guidelines. Most of us know already what we should be doing to keep people safe. But some of these resources will also help walk you through how you can handle caregiver burnout during this time, how you can handle the psychological factors that might go into this weird space where we're in, where we can't really visit with our loved ones, or if we need to be visiting with our loved ones, what we can do to keep them safe. So as far as information, I have a lot of links there for you that you'll be able to use to get that kind of stuff. One thing I want to talk about with information is deciding on whether or not it's necessary, what's necessary to share with your loved one. I have a great colleague, in fact, I've included a couple of her articles, Mickey, who she owns a dementia consulting company. She works with families, she works with senior living communities and professionals, and she's talked a lot recently about how much do you actually need to be sharing with your loved one? Because we're all freaked out, right? Like a lot of us are scared, we're overwhelmed, we don't know how to handle this ourselves. And our loved ones are more at risk, so we can only imagine what kind of feelings they're going through, especially if they're living alone or if they're living in a community. Honestly, it's hard to know how anybody's feeling right now. So I think knowing your person, and you've heard me say this before if you've watched any of my videos, but knowing your person is key here. And knowing how much information is appropriate to share with them. Just like we're all doing right now in trying to navigate how much news do we look at, I think it's also crucial to kind of help monitor that for our loved ones, if that makes sense. So that touches on information. That's that bottom level. We need to stay informed, obviously. Things are constantly changing. And we also need to stay informed if we're a caregiver for an aging parent because things are much more serious for them and we have to take additional precautions and cautions around that. So stay informed and use those resources, but also take care of yourself. So be cautious about what information you're using to really be helpful and what information you might be falling down a hole with. The next one is physiological. Also, not going to spend a ton of time on this because most of us know the precautions we need to take to keep our loved ones safe at home. I think we're pretty aware right now of the PPE that we should be wearing if we can get access to it, how we clean things. There may be two different types of people that are watching this that are caring for an aging loved one. You may have an aging loved one that is at their home and you are trying to care for them while they're at their home, or you might have an aging loved one that lives in a senior living community. Or third, I guess you could have an aging loved one that's living with you or staying with you temporarily. Your precautions are going to be different depending on which of those circumstances that you're in, but the guidelines and the links that I shared in the description here are going to walk you through that pretty reasonably on what you can do. We're trying to keep people safe, and that's what it basically comes down to. What a few clients that I've been working with have said is that it's actually hard right now to get their parent to take it as seriously as all of us are taking it. So I actually included a link in the list there that gives you some guidelines on how to bring this up and how to have a discussion with a loved one that might not be taking it as seriously as you want them to. So that touches on our physiological needs. Home is obviously a necessity. Food, shelter, health, all of those things. If you have a loved one who is not living in a safe home, doesn't have access to groceries or the nutrition that they need, or is having an issue with getting the health care that they need, please call me. I can definitely put you in touch with the right resources for that. But I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think most of us are already spending time there. The next two are what I'm going to talk mostly about, psychological and community, because I have a lot of people reaching out to me right now saying, I can't visit my mom who lives in a senior living community and it's driving me crazy and she's going stir crazy and I don't know how to connect with her. We're trying to be creative. Or I have my mom in her home in Florida and we don't know what we can do to stay connected and help, be there for her during this time. So psychological, there's a lot of stuff going on here right now, of course, right? So all of us are feeling fear, probably some anxiety. Even if you're not anxious and fearful, you can pick up on that energy that's out there right now, right? Especially if you're watching the news. And then you add to that isolation and the depression that can come from isolation that some of our loved ones may be feeling right now. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And so we have to make as much effort as we can to combat that with community. So if you have a loved one that you think is going through some psychological problems right now, there are resources that we can connect them with that would help do evaluations over the phone. Telemedicine is big right now. And there are also probably some local professionals that can provide resources. If you have a question about that, give me a call and I can connect you with them. What I'm talking about with community is that we are trying really hard right now to connect people in a way that's safe, but in a way that's creative and more than just a phone call. A phone call is great, don't get me wrong, but we're already calling our loved ones when they're not with us, right? So because they're no longer able to be with us or be with other people, we are trying really hard to be creative about the ways that we can get to that. So a couple options right now, and some of these go back to safety as well. But what a lot of us are doing in the healthcare field right now are for folks that may have a loved one at home or living with them, or I had a woman call me a few days ago who has like a mom that lives in like a guest house or whatever. For anybody like that may be worried about doing or providing care because they maybe have their college kids home from school and there's a lot of potential that there could be carriers or they could be carriers themselves and maybe they were being primary caregiver before this. Lots of home care agencies are offering respite care with trained caregivers that can come in and provide as much or as little care as is needed. And that might be a good gateway into having your loved one accept care in the long term. What we see so often is people pushing back on the idea of accepting care. You have a pandemic that you can blame it on right now. So if mom has been resistant to the idea of having a nurse, which is what they usually say, I don't need a nurse, if she's been not receptive to that now you can blame it on a global pandemic. Same thing goes for a senior living community. A lot of people that I've been working with have said, well, maybe we'll wait until this is all over so that we can visit the communities and so that we can visit her while she's there. I think there's two sides to that. It's going to depend on the family, but I also want to make sure that I acknowledge the fact that for some people, this might be the perfect time to make a move to a senior living community. The precautions that are being taken at the community level and the safety there, as well as the attention, are much higher than you're going to be able to provide at home. So they have round-the-clock nursing in most communities. They have staff there that are trained on how to provide care. They have proper PPE. They have nutrition programs going on, and they also are able to facilitate engagement, which is really, really big. Because what's happening with a lot of our seniors that live at home is that they are not set up for the Zoom meetings or some of the FaceTime calls because they're not comfortable with that technology, and there's no one in the home to facilitate it. So if you're thinking that this idea of moving to a community with your loved one or for your loved one might be in the cards, you might want to consider what's called a respite stay. Short-term stay. A lot of communities are extending how long those respite stays can be. They come with a furnished apartment if you'd like, or you can bring in some stuff of your own. And it's a great excuse that you can say to your loved one, listen, mom, just until this is all over, we think this is going to be a safer option. And maybe she ends up loving it. So I'm working with a lot of families right now that that's the exact scenario that they're in, and this is going to be a safer move for them. You're going to have to decide for yourself. So it's going to be a very personal decision. I can help walk you through it. And quite honestly, I'm not giving the same advice to every person that I talk to. It's really individual. So just putting that out there, because those are some options right now if you're really concerned about the safety of a loved one, either at home or in a community. So then, getting back to the connection and the community piece, a few ideas that I wanted to throw out at you that might be fun, because I know a lot of people right now are struggling with how do I keep my loved one engaged and how do I make them feel like we're there with them when we're not, because I'm used to visiting or, we're not there locally or whatever. So a few ideas. And first two things I want to mention are a piece of technology that might be a little bit more comfortable than a smartphone for a senior. Excuse me. So there's two things that I really like. One's called a GrandPad, GrandPad, and it's sort of like an iPad for a senior. And what it's like, if you've heard of the Jitterbug phone, similar to a Jitterbug, but it's a larger screen. It has limited options, big buttons, and you can FaceTime call. So I believe there's an app that the family then downloads, but you can do FaceTime stuff with a GrandPad. Now they're pretty cheap, $250 plus $40 a month for like a hosting plan or like a data plan, I guess. So $250 plus $40 a month. In these times, I think that's definitely worth it. The other option is called a ViewCellX, View and then CELX, and it's similar to that, except it's like a what do you call this? Like a digital photo frame, sort of. Except, in addition to it being a digital photo frame, you can also do Post-it reminders that will say like, hey, thinking of you, or hey, I wanted to make sure you have enough groceries, and face calls. And I really like that. It comes in two different sizes. It sits right on the tabletop, and it's no email buttons, nothing like that, very straightforward. That one runs $200 to $300 depending on what size you would get. So I wanted to throw those two things out there because I think that could be really, really helpful for a lot of families that either have someone at home or living in a community where they can't be there with them. So it's GrandPad and ViewCellX. Those are the two products I wanted to throw out there. Excuse me. So now, got some fun ideas here because I know we've already talked about calls. A lot of people are doing FaceTime stuff. I've seen all thank you everybody that shares these videos with me that are like the families standing outside of the assisted living singing happy birthday, and I love them. I love that people are being creative like this. A few other ways that I have thought of or I've heard other people doing is a story call or like a family reunion call. In fact, my family just did this past weekend. We did a family reunion Zoom call, and you could do it on FaceTime too. And one of my family members, one of my cousins, put together like a slideshow of old pictures, family tree stuff, and it was interactive. We talked about old stories that we remembered. It was so, so nice and would be such a great way for your loved one to feel like they have something to say. I think the problem with some of our FaceTime calls and everything, and this comes back to even before a pandemic, is that people find it hard to visit, and it's not anyone's fault. It's hard to have visits with older loved ones sometimes because we have a lot going on in our worlds, right? Like we have our jobs and we have our kids and we have, the neighborhood and everything that we're worried about. And it seems to us like they don't. It seems to us like they have the house and they're retired and, whatever. Or they live in a community and it seems like everything is done for them. And so that means that they don't have anything that they want to talk about in their life, which is not the case. So I wrote a whole blog about that, and I can always share it with you if you want, or you can find it on the website, but about how to have a good visit. And the number one key to that is making it about them. Make them feel important, make them feel useful. So that's also key if you're doing something like a FaceTime call or a Zoom meeting with a family member. So that's why I like the idea of the family reunion, because your older loved ones can contribute to that and also lead it in some ways. So you can ask them, Mom, what was that story about Uncle Dan? Whatever. So it's interactive. It's not just like an unscripted FaceTime call. The idea of a story call is sort of similar to that, but where you go through either family stories, or if you have young kids at home, you can have them read stories to their grandparents who are in a community. or have them interview the grandparents about the community. So I think that's a really great idea, which also brings me to the idea of doing like a family history or a biography type thing with a loved one right now. I'm launching, I got to sit down with Lois Hoffman, who is the Happy Self publisher. And she works with families and seniors that want to write either their life story or a novel or whatever it might be. She can help them if they want to self-publish it, but she can also do like prompting and kind of deep diving to help get that story out. So this is a really good time to do that. If you've wanted to do something like that with a loved one, no better time to do it than right now. So that's the idea of doing like a life story or a story call. You can also do, because I know we're really trying, all of us are trying to stay active right now, and we can go out and walk, but maybe it's not safe for our loved ones to do that, or maybe they can't walk far distances unaccompanied. So the idea of a seated dance class, it's really, really easy to lead a seated dance class, guys. And I'm not saying that just because I used to teach Zumba. Leading a seated dance class is super, super easy. And you can also find videos of it online. So what I recommend is learn 1 or 2 dances that you can do in a chair and FaceTime, Zoom, or use one of these technologies and do it with your loved one. Or you can say, Mom, I'm going to call you and we're going to play your favorite song and we're going to dance in the kitchen and you sit and bop in the chair. I mean, really, we're just trying to make sure that people are staying active. So that's one idea, seated dance class or seated stretches, seated yoga, or your loved one, if they're able to do, non-seated exercises, you could also do that. Mudras, I did a whole video, you can find it on the Facebook page, about Mudras. Mudras is yoga for your fingers and your eyes. Super easy. Once you learn how to do it, you can always do it, and it's fun. So if you're calling or FaceTiming or whatever with a loved one, try using Mudras because it's a fun way to get their brain active also. Let's see. There's a game called Psych. My family and I have been playing this. It's one of the Ellen games. It's an app you can download on your phone. So if you have a relative that is technologically savvy, you can download it as an app, but you could also play it without it being an app. And it's interactive, and there's a lot of different versions that you can use. So it's called Psych with an exclamation point at the bottom or at the end. So that's an app that I would definitely recommend. There's also a game that I play with residents in senior living communities called Name That Tune. So easy. There's a version of it that I also play called the Humming Game. So if you have a call with a loved one, instead of just like we're saying, not having like a plan for the call, try playing a game like the Humming Game or Name That Tune. So Name That Tune is you play a part of a song, and whoever guesses it first gets the point. And then the Humming Game is where you go around in a circle and you hum a song, and whoever guesses it gets it, and then you keep going. So those are so easy, and they incorporate music, which is really, really good for people. It's good for all of us right now, and it's especially good for our seniors. Those two can also be used with people with dementia, because we know in dementia that music is one of the last things that people maintain. So even if you have somebody that's, advanced dementia, you can still use that. Which brings me to a point, and to go back to my friend Mickey, who's the dementia consultant. I think you want to be careful right now, and again, know your person, how much you want to utilize technology with visiting with a loved one with dementia. Because some of them who did not grow up with the idea of a FaceTime call may not understand how you're in a screen in their hand. So know your person and know whether or not that's going to be an effective way to visit, or if it's going to be overwhelming and may not be helpful. And for that person that it might be overwhelming for, you may want to do cards. So to go to something a little bit more, and you can always join them in their reality, which is what we always say in this industry, join them in their reality, send them postcards. I mean, honestly, you can send them whatever. So mail is always fun to get. So know your person. Let's keep going here. There are 2 websites that I want to recommend to you guys if you're looking for other activities that you might be able to either print and send or do over the phone. One is called notjustbingo.com. Both of these are activity director websites that I've used in the past when I was an activities director, but they're just as easily accessible for families that want to use them. They have great printables. They have awesome ideas. They have trivia, riddles, all sorts of things. A lot of things that are seasonal too. So you can go in and do like a whole day of April Fool's activities activities that you could either print out and send to a loved one, or that you could do over the phone. So that one's called notjustbingo.com. And then the other one that I really like is Activity Connection. Now, Activity Connection, you're going to have to pay for. It's not expensive though. It's like $22 a month, and you could cancel anytime. So I would say for the next few months or next month, or however long this is going to be going on, definitely worth the $22. Activityconnection.com. Couple other ideas. It is the idea of baking or cooking with somebody, either over the phone or over a virtual call. So, your mom may have had that recipe that you remember growing up, and this is a perfect time to call her and get it, which will make her feel important, and then ask her if she wouldn't mind staying on the phone while you bake it. It's going to make her feel so engaged, and even if she's not cooking it herself, she's still going to know that she's being useful for you and that you're going to be connected that way. So I love that idea. This is a really, really good time for us to be building up the people and getting wisdom from our seniors. So it's all about that community. So hopefully some of these ideas were helpful for you guys. There is the National Certification Council for Activities Professionals put out a list of, I think it's like 101, might even be more than that, programming ideas that you can do remotely during the coronavirus. I have that link that I'm going to be sharing on the page. So make sure you like Brandywine Concierge, and you'll see it when it goes up. And anything else that you think of that might be supportive or might be a way that I can help out, please give me a call. So hope all of this was helpful, and we'll do it again soon. All right, talk to you later, guys. Have a good day.